So let's forget about test scores for a minute. Forget about trivia knowledge. Today, we're going to look at something way more fundamental: the simple, everyday habits that, according to psychology, can actually reveal an underperforming mind. You know the feeling, right? We've all been there. You're in a conversation, and the other person is just absolutely certain about something, but you know for a fact they're completely mistaken. They're speaking with so much authority, but their logic just isn't adding up. Well, what's so fascinating is that psychology actually has a name for this. It's not just a personality quirk, it's not just arrogance, it's what's known as a cognitive trap. Basically, a flawed way of thinking that really limits our ability to learn and grow. So let's break down four of the most common ones. All right, first up is a trap that I think we probably all see every single day. It's the confidence trap, and it creates this powerful illusion of knowledge. Now, this is all rooted in a really famous psychological idea called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And in simple terms, it's when someone's incompetence actually prevents them from seeing their own incompetence, you know? Their very lack of skill creates this dangerous, totally false sense of confidence. So, what does this actually look like in the real world? Well, you see it in people who speak with this incredible certainty, even when they don't really understand the topic. They are often completely closed off to any kind of feedback, and this is the big one, they are just unable to recognize their own mistakes. And you can see how this is a pattern that just stalls any kind of growth, because if you can't see your own errors, how can you ever fix them? This quote from the source material just sums it up perfectly. They don't know enough to realize how much they don't know. It's this wild paradox where ignorance actually fuels confidence. And this leads us directly into our next trap. Okay, so our second trap is what psychologists call cognitive rigidity. Just think of it as the trap of the closed mind. It's like a mental brick wall that stops any new information from getting in. And this slide really shows the difference, right? It's night and day. On one side, you've got rigidity, seeing everything in black and white, avoiding new ideas, and treating any disagreement like it's a personal attack. But on the other side, you have curiosity, that drive to ask why, to seek out challenges, and maybe most importantly, to actually update your own beliefs when you get new evidence. And this is why this trap is so incredibly limiting. Our brains grow when they're challenged. So by actively avoiding anything that feels new or difficult or even just a little boring, a person with cognitive rigidity is basically starving their brain of the very fuel it needs to develop. The third trap is all about speed, but not in a good way. This is the trap of the impulse reaction. It's what happens when there's absolutely zero pause between a trigger and a response. You see, psychology shows us that smart thinking really requires a pause, but underperforming thought patterns, they often follow this flawed process right here. A stimulus comes in, maybe it's a comment they don't like, and boom, the reaction is instant and it's emotional. The actual thinking part, well, that comes way later, if it comes at all. You definitely see this trap in people who have really poor impulse control. They might be thin-skinned, get offended easily, speak without thinking, or just erupt with anger. Psychologists directly link this inability to regulate impulses with weaker problem-solving skills. And you can imagine how that can burn bridges and damage relationships. And this is really the key takeaway. That little tiny gap between a stimulus and our response, that is where intelligence lives. It's the space where we have the chance to think, to reason, and to choose a thoughtful action instead of just reacting on autopilot. And that brings us to our final cognitive trap, a vicious cycle that makes learning from your experiences almost impossible. This is the blame loop, the trap of no responsibility. This kind of behavior is rooted in a psychological concept called an external locus of control. And what that really means is it's the core belief that your life isn't shaped by your own choices. Instead, you believe it's controlled by outside forces, other people, bad luck, the system. And this creates a truly self-defeating cycle. It goes like this. A person makes a mistake, but instead of looking inward, they immediately blame something or someone else. And because they don't take responsibility, they never learn. They never self-correct. And because they don't learn, well, they are destined to repeat the exact same mistake over and over and over again. Psychologists connect this directly to something called low metacognition. And metacognition is just a fancy way of saying thinking about your own thinking. Without that skill, you can't really analyze your own failures, which leaves you completely stuck in that loop of just repeating them. So, after going through all of these traps, the big question is, can we escape them? And the answer is absolutely yes. And it all begins with the power of awareness. And listen, this is probably the most important takeaway from this whole explainer. These traps are habits of thought. They are not life sentences. They're just signs that a brain is underperforming its potential. And the really good news is, habits can be broken. The psychological sources are so clear on this. The journey out of any one of these cognitive traps doesn't begin with some complex strategy. Nope. It begins with a single, really powerful moment of self-awareness. That ability to just look at your own behavior and admit, I see that pattern in myself.
Because ultimately, the real trap isn't falling into one of these patterns. I mean, let's be honest, we all do from time to time. The biggest trap is being completely unaware that they even exist. So the question I want to leave you with is this: which one will you start watching for?